kick in and for everybody on
Yeah.
LinkedIn to be notified and on YouTube. So welcome everybody to the Delta CX live stream podcast. We are totally live and unscripted. It is Thursday, February 6th, 2020. And I am super thrilled to finally meet William Ntim. We've been going back and forth on LinkedIn here and there, and I
Yeah.
invited him on. He's got a great perspective. So everybody knows I have a whole bunch of windows to open. So William, tell us about you.
Hi, it is a pleasure to be here, Debbie. I love your enthusiasm and your
Thank
voice in the
you.
industry, and I have to be honest that it is refreshing to have somebody like you fighting for
Thank
us,
you.
fighting for what's right.
Thank
I
you.
think that's yeah, I think that's a good thing because we're kind of left to ourselves, and it feels good to know that hey, we got people now to look out for us. So that's a good thing.
Doing my best. But tell everybody about you. Where have you been? What do you do? How'd you get there?
Yeah. I'm a principal UX designer here at the Home Depot, and most of us here in the United States are familiar with the Home Depot. It's a great company that specializes in everything home, really DIY. All the materials from wood to hobbies. We have it all. But before I got here, I've had um, pretty interesting experience. Just like most senior level UX professionals, I started as an engineer. Actually, I started as a graphic designer, and
Okay.
then graduated into front end engineering, and then from there uh, evolved into focusing on the UX design side of it. I think for me, I love designing. I love the aesthetic look. That the beauty of creation, that art in the design work is my passion. So um, the development aspect was great, but it wasn't really fulfilling me as an individual, as a professional. And yeah, just eventually, taking on design roles and specializing in UX roles really evolved that. And I decided to just channel all my energy and my focus into that. So that's how I came into UX. But I've worked with some pretty awesome companies, large multi-million dollar companies, all the way to small businesses. And one thing I found going through all of those different levels is you experience different things from all angles, and you experience different good and bad things, right, from different various forms within throughout that whole process. So it's been a great learning curve, and I'm thankful for everything I went through to this stage. Yeah.
Great, great. And everybody can find you and follow you on LinkedIn. Your last name is spelled N like Nancy, T like Thomas, I and M like Mary. So find him,
Yeah.
follow him. So
Yes.
today you're here to talk about presenting to stakeholders and dealing with some of the pushback. So tell us some of your tips and tricks there. Is there anything you do special or different in the presentation that helps us even before there's the pushback?
Yeah, yeah, I think and Lee Andrews spoke on this in I think the last podcast about
Yeah, yeah,
storytelling.
we did
It's
storytelling with her.
Yeah, so it's really, I mean, that's where it begins, right? The storytelling part is that is the skeleton, the backbone of the entire process of getting this buy-in. So understanding that, okay, I need to, using the right process is key, is essential, because if you apply some of these principles that are vital to your process as a UX designer, then your outcome is most likely bound to be closely related to the solutions that the users are looking for. So once you add
Imagine
that back,
that.
amen, right? I know. Once you add that backbone of storytelling, then it becomes, hey, how can I convey the same message to the stakeholder, right? How can I convey this message and breaking down the process that I use, and also breaking down the needs of the user, and then explaining how these two go together and what the results are going to be. That is that's the backbone, and that's how you really even begin the whole thing, right? You tell your story, and of course the tools that you use. So um, you want to make sure you're using the right tools, the right graphics, the right design to present this solution, because we're all visual people. We all have eyes, and that speaks a lot. So not just a combination of visual elements, but audio, just whatever you need to make that presentation worthwhile is very, very important. Um, but yeah, that would be my I guess my outtake on that for presentation.
Okay, and then something that I say in some of my talks and in my book is, for some reason, the Venn diagram of what customers need and what the business wants to build sometimes isn't overlapping at all. And
That
UX gets accused of, you're not making stakeholders happy. Stakeholders want this. Why are you trying to build this other unrelated thing? In your experience, do you have any tricks or tools or magic or a catchphrase that you use to try to wake those stakeholders and business people up to, like, hey, wait a minute, we might be going in the wrong direction if we try to build this other thing?
Yeah, so that's a good point. That is a really good point. I think the trick, quote unquote, there is to figure out what the just as we're going to be figuring out what the problem uh, uh, problem is for the user, right? The problem statement is for the user. It is also key to figure out what that problem the stakeholder is also trying to solve, because they might they might say, hey, this is what we want you to design or build, but being able to ask more questions, pull in some more information and say, oh, okay, well, why would you like me to build it this way? And then being able to pull all of those information in, because there's a lot of data there that they may not be given to you just willingly. But once you pull that out, you might actually find out that, well, there are certain, there are other ways you could solve this, or um, what their ask is actually right. So then you can take that and say, okay, well, based on this information, what does the user problem look like, and how can I merge it too? But then, see, that gets into a fine line of designing for the stakeholder and not necessarily for the user. So,
Right.
so it's like, well, if the stakeholder is asking, most of the time they're asking based on user needs or based on company goals, but there's still a hint of both in any stakeholder ask, right? So you as a
We
UX,
hope.
well, right. Usually, I mean, because it's like, okay, well, we want to make a lot of money, we want to increase growth and ROI, but at the same time, how can we do that by providing one more feature or one better service? So you as the UXer, uh, leaning in and asking the right questions to pull that, okay, what's the ultimate goal here, and then what are the problems that the consumers are facing, or what's their current state with whatever feature that they currently have, and then seeing, well, can we optimize this in such a way that satisfies both stakeholder and user. There's a way to do that. I think that's possible, but it's just knowing the right questions to ask, and then, well, from both sides, and then you have to put your skills together, because you are the professional and this is part of your job, to be able to cook that meal.
Yeah, right. And we are interface scientists, not short order cooks. We're not order takers. We are celebrity chefs,
Right.
in a
Exactly.
low ego
Gourmet.
way, low ego celebrity chefs. I want to remind everybody we're live right now and unscripted as always. So if you're watching us on LinkedIn or YouTube, please ask any questions or give us any comments. Hello to Francisco from Brazil, and friend of the show, Samantha, who I know is American and I think is a veteran. Thank you, Samantha.
Hey,
So I,
yeah.
I wanted to ask you, uh, thinking about stakeholders. Now you're talking about, how do we deal with pushback? What are there, like, main types of pushback you tend to see when you're presenting? And again, do you have any tricks or catchphrases that you use to try to deal with some of that? Well, I don't know, William. I don't know if we can afford all the time and money you want to build that.
Yeah. So I think when we were talking about this podcast, I got really excited, and I made a list of what I think UX professionals need to understand, and at least some of the key things they need to um, know. The first thing that came to my mind, or that comes to mind when it comes to pushback or navigating pushback, is one, just facing that reality that you will receive pushback. that just kind of clears the air for you as a UX professional, because I think most UXers do not know that they're going to receive pushback, and some of them entry level, mid level, assume it's going to be all groovy and it's just, hey, I'm a UX person, my decisions stick. No, so so that's not going to happen. So let's get that out of the way. You are going to receive pushback, and that's going to happen. All right, great. Now, how you navigate that is really. There are different types of pushback, okay? And we were talking about this book I'm writing as well. Shameless plug
Yay.
later on, but
Shameless plug for a future book.
I know, I have a future book, but there are different types of pushback. One, if you do everything right, use the user-centered process and focus on the user throughout your design with the right research, data-driven, and your solutions are still pushed back. Now, the way you go about this is being able to still go back to that storytelling and explaining your process and explaining why these solutions are going to generate the outcome that the stakeholder is looking for. See, the key is always being able to tie it back into the stakeholder outcome, because the ask is one thing and then the outcome is the other thing.
It's the money. I'm miming money. The people listening
Yeah,
to this later, well,
yeah,
it sounds like you're saying we've got to work with our stakeholders to find out what metrics they're measuring and what
yeah.
savings or money they expect, and then make sure we're able to tie those solutions to that.
Exactly, because they are spending money. You know, it's like we talk about empathy. Well, we have to be empathic with the stakeholder as well, because they are spending money. They are, spending lots and lots of money to get the company running, operations, and also features, salaries. So yeah, like, it's essential to empathize with a stakeholder to a certain degree and say, hey, look, I get it, and this is the way we can achieve this, and I promise you that this will work. See, now you can make statements like that because you know the data is saying, hey, look, users hate this feature or users love this feature. If we optimize this side of our entire flow, we are going to get a great return on investment, and then that will definitely lit up the stakeholder, and they're going to really value your input. But then the next point is also being able to detach yourself from your solutions. It is key to detach yourself and understand, okay, this is your work, this is not personal, because it does get really emotional when you receive pushback from stakeholders or even project managers or your team. It could get really, constructive criticism could get under your skin if you're not in that mindset of, hey, this is this is just for the project, for the solution, and I'm just a cook, the gourmet chef in the kitchen that's making all this happen. So once you detach yourself from your work, then you're able to defend it with the data, with the research, instead of saying, well, this is what I want, and I think this looks better. Then it
Yeah,
becomes,
never say that.
yeah, never do a personal, never use personal pronouns or like me, I. No, it's just the data says what users say, and just kind of
Right.
going that route. Um, it helps out a lot.
Yeah, that's a great point, because I think when we say those things, even if we say them accidentally or we meant something else, but if we say, I want this, or even I think this, I find that I think this can also weaken a point, because then
Yes,
what ends up is you accidentally shift the focus on the work away from the customers and the value in the work. And now it's about, what do I think versus what do you think? And now it's a battle of opinions, and you've got to
exactly.
stay away from that.
I love that. No, I love that. Yesterday I was driving and I thought about that. And I thought about the exact same I think. I was like, I'm going to stop using I think,
Yeah.
because it's, yeah, I think, but as far as, professionally, I think, but that's not really what I'm trying to say. And the moment I say I think, then it becomes, well, is my thought right? Then I have all these other sub thoughts of, well, why am I thinking that way? Am I being biased? So all of these different thoughts start going on. It's like, okay, no, take that out of your vocabulary and just say, well, what does the data say? The data says, users say, this solution actually, from an industry standard standpoint, has been used in this way, And that's why I would recommend, or that's why my recommendation is this, path. So that kind of helps even you for the designer mentally, helps you detach yourself as well as you're presenting your solutions.
Yeah, one phrase that I try to use, especially when I hear myself getting ready to say I think, is I try to say, well, hold on. I ask myself, like, is this an opinion or is this something we know? And if it's something we know from data we have or research we should do, I try to use phrases like, we know, because
Exactly.
first of
Yes.
all, you take out the I, and second of all, now it's the
Wait.
team.
Hmm.
We on the team, we as a team know customers do this. We saw from our last project,
Yeah. Yeah.
we know. And
Yeah.
and I would try to, and people go like, "Oh, Deb, that's sneaky." And I say, "Look, if we're going to play mind games, we might as well win." So, think about, we know this, or here's something we don't know. Could we spin up research, and can you give me a few days to spin up some quick research and
Yes.
know this, so that we're not guessing or assuming? Do you have any weapons in your arsenal for when a stakeholder is going by guesses and assumptions? Well, I think customers are going to like it, or I think customers are going to do this.
Ooh.
What do you have something you like to say to them to try to pull them back into the customer value land?
Yeah, I think that okay. You know what? Yeah, it's a scary terrain, but nonetheless, as professionals, we have to do our job with integrity, with honesty, and authenticity, because that's the only way we prove our value, and that's the only way that the company's overall customer value can increase ROI and all that. In a situation like that, where the stakeholders say, "This is what I think the customers are going to love," being able to say, "Okay, I could see that," and once again, empathizing with her, I could
That's
see
a
that, but
good neutral validation.
yeah, like I could see why you say that. Can you expand more? Can you give me some more information why you think that or why you're saying? Because asking questions sometimes brings out certain things that counter our presumptions, or our biases. Because automatically we're going to assume that the stakeholder, because they said I, are just assume it, but then they may have conducted some research on their end a few years ago or something. So it's
Well,
also
marketing
critical,
said,
or marketing said, so it's like, okay, well, why do you say that? Why did marketing say this? And then, well, because that's what the VP wanted. Oh, okay. So then you take that information and you can say, well, okay, that's fair, but we did some research here, and I'm just kind of concerned that if we go that route, we might. So being able to show the path of, I don't want to use the word failure, but the path of
I call it
chaos,
possible outcomes.
or the possible outcomes, right? Yeah. So being able to show that and say, okay, well, if we go that route, these are some of the outcomes that we can get. We can get crazy, chaotic, tragedy, whatever, and then, or we could get that success that you're looking for. But it's a very, small gap, or the possibility is not that huge. So that could be a way to go about that. And then from then, you might still get pushback, and they might still say, well, that sounds good, but that's what VP wants, that's what we do, or that's what whoever wants, right? And that's fine. At that point, you have to be able to say, okay, that's fine. If that's what you want, I'll deliver. Because at the end, they are your boss, and you still want to respect that authority, but you still did your part. You were still true to your role, and that is everything. Being able to do your work in truth and honesty and authenticity and integrity is just like, okay, great, I did it. And then in the end, if the results don't prove what the stakeholder wanted, then they could come back and say, hey, well, um, you know, hey, we tried. Okay, you were right. Can we revert back to that other solution? That's good. And that's fine. That's better than um, handling it in a wrong way, where there's friction, and then it becomes more opinionated fights or disagreements, and just gets really uncomfortable. Just kind of handle it as, hey, this is a project, and giving them that respect, that assumption that they're also there in the same in the same vein of company goals, and they want to see things succeed. They want to see features, So everyone wants that. If you assume that, it helps you with your interaction with team and stakeholders and collaboration. Yeah.
Yeah, we got to try to remind them that if we do something great for the customers, yes, it's going to make us money. And, with Macy's announced that the office I used to work in is closing. So I've been having flashbacks all week. And let's just say not a lot of them positive. And what I
Yeah.
started doing there, which I recommend to people now and wrote into my book, is when you have that pushback, and I don't know if you're doing something like this or different, or tell me what you think. I'm telling people, start documenting. Let's say somebody overrules you. Let's say the
Yeah.
VP says, yeah, your idea looks interesting, but we really think it should be like this. And you're just kind of stuck running with that VP's idea. Well, you still document your idea. But what I
Mhm.
started doing was I started documenting the possible outcomes and the potential risk of the other idea that people went with. And that way, if it did fail later on, or there was trouble with it later on, or it became a money pit later on, I could say, well, just so you know, I did predict that. You have to find a
Yes.
better way to say that than I'm thinking right now. I'm not
Yeah.
saying it as well as I should, but if you see my previous documentation, I did predict that this was going to be
Yes.
a problem or a failure or a money pit. And, part of my job is to have predicted that. And, could we, if this is now a failure, or again, go back to your measurements and your KPIs, this now looks like a failure. Could we
Yeah.
please could we please possibly try our idea, and we'll do lots of user testing before it goes to engineering so that we're not
Yeah.
burning too much money too fast. Do you do something like that in those situations? Do you have another approach?
That's a great approach,
Oh,
actually.
thank you.
I think a lot of people should adopt that, honestly,
Thanks.
because being able to leave those breadcrumbs and say, hey, or being able to refer to a link or a document with an auto date, automatic date stamp that says, hey, look, this was written 2 years ago, and I called it, I said it, but not
Right.
rubbing it in your face, but saying,
Yeah,
hey,
not in a
like,
yay me way.
just to draw your attention. Yeah, it's like I called this, and the reason why I saw this was because XYZ. I think that builds trust, because you still want to be able to build trust in your value, in your work, in your expertise. So that is I love that. That is
Oh,
actually
thanks.
great idea to definitely do that. I do that, but not in um, a documentative way. So I do that mentally, and I'll still voice it out, and we'll talk about it. Now I'll still push back and say, "Hey, this is the data. This is what I'm seeing. This is what we're looking at." But I don't document that breadcrumbs. Like, as far as what other technology we have, you can create a document and just save it and leave it alone, and that could be great. But while you were talking, I thought of this. So documentation. Oh, I thought of this. Yeah. So while you're staying true to your expertise, to your role, to your passion as a UXer, and sticking to the right process and defending good solutions, good design solutions, what's going to happen is you might not notice it, but even though you're getting pushback from some stakeholders, there are other stakeholders that are equally or even more important, that are seeing your they're seeing your expertise, they're seeing your integrity, they're seeing your value. And if
Okay.
you may not get that, let me word this right, you may not see it, you may not get that return instantly, but in the end, it somehow finds a way to get back to you, where you're rewarded for practicing that good design, discipline, or
Yeah, so
UX.
if I'm hearing you correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't want to
Yeah.
misquote you. It sounds like you're saying if you stay true to your craft and stay true to following the customer's needs, that you might lose this particular battle and you might get overruled, but there will be other people who see the way that you approach the project and in the future might be more of your ally.
Yes, that's correct. And also, even if you lose those battles, in the long run, the thing is, people move around, people change, and then management changes and things
Right.
change. So as you continue to build up that trust, to build up that gold, store up that gold in your treasure chest, and say, hey, look, I keep creating all this gold, but no one wants it. Okay, that's great. But just keep building that, keep sticking to that, and that truth. And then eventually, if that stakeholder management or whoever is above you is not there, there might be someone watching or someone who was there before that could say, you know what, this person really did a great job, and we could trust that they will have the company's goals as their priority, and then things just move up from there. So
That's a great way to look at it, that even that when there are times when there is pushback and you might lose the battle, that you might really be planting seeds for a
yes,
better future outcome, maybe on this project, maybe on another project. I
yes.
want to quickly remind people that we only have a few more minutes with William. I know you guys are used to me going an hour and talking everybody's heads off. He's so nice to give us a piece of his lunch hour. No peaches involved. And so if you have any questions or comments for him, please get them into LinkedIn or YouTube now, because we've only got a few more minutes with him before he's got to run. So since you've got a few more minutes, are there any other points that you wanted to get to? I didn't know if you had any notes or things that you
I do, yeah.
wanted to
Let
get to.
me. I had my list that I wanted to kind of touch base really quickly.
See how fast a
Um,
half hour goes?
I know that was fast, just like blink of an eye and it's gone. So yeah. Well, okay. So we talked about the reality of pushbacks, that it is a thing, it is going to happen, and we should just expect it as UX professionals. Also, practicing good user-centered, data-centered design, and then um, of course, emphasizing the important role of research and utilizing that throughout our design process, and then highlighting the possibilities of um, all the different outcomes from stakeholder ask, right, and the positive and the negative, but also realizing there are possible infrastructural blockers and limitations that developers
Sure.
face. And we're not prone to that. We don't have eyes on that, but uh, as they do. But in the long run, sometimes pushbacks from developers are legitimate. And
Yeah.
we should also empathize with them to that degree to understand, okay, well, we may not be able to do this now, but we can do it in the future. Or how can we still achieve a similar result using a different route, and pulling them in to give you that feedback. The other point too was, well, we got to have a lot of patience as
Mm.
UX professionals. Being able to have that patience to sit through these meetings, to sit through pushbacks, to conduct the research that we need before we jump to designing, all of that, to ask the right questions is very important. And lastly, realizing that we could be wrong. We could do all of this right and still be wrong, because user behavior changes.
Right.
And by the time we roll out a new feature, they might have moved on to the next big thing. And it's like, well, we got to update our solutions or our design to suit that. So yeah, I think if we take some of these into consideration, we should have a good starting point. Yeah.
Yeah, and talking to you reminds me of how we can't fall too in love even with competitor analysis, because
Yeah.
when I worked at Macy's, every quarter we would look at competitors' apps, and sometimes we would be like, "Whoa, look at what these guys are doing, and look what these guys are doing," and then wheels would start spinning. And the funny thing is, then the next quarter would come, you would do the analysis again, you'd be like, "That thing is gone. They took
Yeah.
that out." Like,
Yeah.
we thought that was kinda cool, great, interesting, whatever. They took it out.
Yeah.
What? It
Yeah.
must not have worked, so, don't fall too in love with what the other guy is doing.
Love it. Love it. That reminds me, and I'll say this story as short as I can, but there was one time I had to present a 40-page. I created a 40-page presentation on why we needed an entire new UX for the global web enterprise website. This was a
Okay.
multi-billion-dollar company. Huge task, but I was like, I was young, I was energetic. Say, look, we need this. It's critical, and this is how much money we're leaving on the table. Um, Now, there was a competitor analysis that I did, and I actually created the design solutions first. And when I perform, I do that. I do that. That's a tip. I create my solutions before I perform competitor analysis, and that's because I don't want to be biased in my designs. Because sometimes that's how bad design solutions stick, because most designers just go out and look at what everybody's doing, and then now your mind is already kind of tuned into oh, well, these are the boxes and the constraints that I can design in, and then it just follows the trend. So I like to just go wild first and then see, oh, that was too crazy. Or, you know what? That's actually a better solution. I don't like this. I'm going to stick with that. So I did that. And then after designing, realized, wait, they're doing the same thing. So I did the analysis and realized our largest competitor was doing the same thing. So I go back and in my presentation, well, actually, take that back. I did not do that. Well, yeah, I did that analysis, and they were still at the same. They had the same UI that we had, which I was trying to change. So during my presentation, I was going to make a statement. That was my climax. You know, that peak point of me saying, guys, if we change this up this way, we're going to be the leaders in this industry. This is how we're going to win, because look at what these guys are doing. And real time, I typed in the website to show them, and it's like, boom, they had completely rolled out a new web interface. And I'm like, oh, it looks like they changed.
That wasn't there yesterday.
That wasn't there yesterday. I was like, well, it looks like they changed it. So I used that as a stepping stool. I was like, guys, look, this wasn't there yesterday. So I used Wayback Machine. I went back. I said, look, this is a date, the date stamp. This is what it looked like, and they changed it. I wrote this document, kind of tying back to what you were saying. Mine was a print copy with the PowerPoint slide. So I was like, I designed this 2 weeks ago. This is the idea I'm trying to push. Now, look, they rolled this out yesterday. They've been working on this for a while. This is the way forward. And I think that helped the entire presentation. In a week's time, I heard back and we got approval and we rolled that out. It was insane. It was insane. Yeah, but it's always awesome when you're really passionate and you're true to the process and to your discipline. I think everything else works together in that way, either slowly or in huge chunks. But at the end of the day, you make the users happy and you make the stakeholders happy as well. So.
And I know we're running out of time with you. I'm going to throw in one last thing really quickly. And that was, I'm pretty candid about my 2 years at Macy's and how I have nothing to show in my portfolio for it. And I try to remind people that there are going to be some of those jobs where you just feel like, oh my God, am I even doing anything? Did I design anything? Oh my God. But then I look back and I say, you know what? I fought a lot of battles at that job and I saved the customer from a lot of junk that they never saw because I fought for something to not happen. So it's a little hard to put that in your portfolio. But I know that I did some great things at Macy's, even though I can't show them to you because I made them never happen. And so for people who are in some of those tough jobs, don't get down about it. You know, as William says, you are still stay passionate, stay true to the craft, and you are still doing good work, even if not all your stuff is going out to the public.
That's perfect. Beautifully said. You're saving the world from bad UX, one pushback or one battle at a time, and that's all that matters.
Yes, I'm sorry we didn't get any questions, and I know you got to run, but thank you so much. Thanks for giving us your lunchtime. Everybody find him on LinkedIn, and someday he's going to write a book. So, you know, put your money aside now for whatever that'll be. And
by the way, I'm still reading it, but
thank you.
It's been crazy busy. But wow, so
it's
far
okay.
it's like, yes, I'm not crazy. You know how you think you're crazy, and then you just hear other thoughts from thought leaders like you, and you're like, oh, okay, all is well.
Yeah, well, thank you. That's a beautiful thing. So yes, I've got a book, Delta CX. So everybody find us on LinkedIn, subscribe to Delta CX on YouTube. We've got lots of content there. Quick programming note, don't forget to join us next week for a mountain of fun. We are going to be doing a bunch of live streams next week. We've got a live stream podcast with 2 hiring managers who are going to tell you what they really think about boot camp graduates. And we're also doing live improv comedy. If you want to join us live, it's totally anonymous. You can let your hair down, as I have. We're going to be filling in a lean UX canvas with lots of comedy. So join us next week. And as always, Tuesday is office hours. So thanks to everybody for joining. And thanks to William again. And I will wrap up the live stream. Give me a moment. Let's see. Stop live stream. Okay, thanks.